All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the presidential plenary session. My name is Ismail Hamamsi. I'm the current president of the Society for the next day and a half, and it is my distinct pleasure to give this presidential address this morning to the audience and the Society membership. The title is Together Now as One. Over 4,000 years ago, in the sands of ancient Egypt, Imhotep, a man born of humble origins, rose to become a physician, an architect, and a high priest. He designed the step pyramid of Djoser, but more than that, he became one of the earliest recorded physicians in history. He believed in the healing power of knowledge, passed from one generation to the next, and rooted in the collaboration across multiple disciplines. Today, as we gather here at the Heart Valve Society, I invite us to channel that same spirit, to look beyond borders, to build together, and to heal through science, practice, and partnership. Let's begin with a foundational principle. Excellence is not bound by geography. Innovation is not confined to rich countries. Brilliance is not gated by borders. Collaboration, true global collaboration, is the engine of progress in our field. To me, nowhere did this become clearer than in the story of the Aswan Heart Center. When it began in 2009, it was little more than a dream, and a pretty unrealistic one for that matter. A banner was erected on a wing of an existing government hospital with limited fundings, hundreds of kilometers away from the capital. A couple of scarcely equipped operating rooms, limited technology and local resources, but it had one powerful asset, a shared vision, a belief that every child and every adult in need of advanced cardiac care, regardless of income or location, deserved access to the best. Through tight collaboration between Egyptian and international physicians, nurses, scientists, administrators, Aswan quickly became much more than a hospital. It became a model. World-class surgery is now performed there daily. Complex valve repairs, arterial switch operations, redo operations, congenital reconstruction, not as an exception, but as a standard of care. Today, the Aswan Heart Center performs over 100 arterial switch operations a year out of over 1,000 open heart procedures and 3,000 catheter interventions. These results were achieved not by parachuting in expertise, but by building it, sharing it, and embedding it in the local system. Young Egyptian doctors opted to make Aswan home. Local nurses became national leaders in post-operative care. Young scientists quickly realized that some of the issues were unique and local problems required local solutions. Screening campaigns for rheumatic heart disease were established, local registries followed, and innovative answers were proposed. The center also became a magnet for innovation, imaging research, tissue engineering, valvular biomechanics, all fueled by a spirit of openness and shared purpose between teams from Egypt, the UK, Canada, the US, and beyond. On the eve of the inauguration of the Global Heart Center in Cairo, a 300-bed dedicated cardiac center with state-of-the-art facilities dedicated to the care of cardiac patients from everywhere and entirely free at the point of care, one can only admire what a true collaborative effort involving all stakeholders with the patient in the middle can help achieve. What started with vision and a bare operating table in Upper Egypt has grown into one of the most respected cardiovascular institutions in Africa, and a beacon of what is possible when we stop asking, what do we have, but instead start asking, who can we bring together? This is not just a nice story, it's proof that excellence can emerge anywhere, when we collaborate with humility, when we listen with respect, and when we invest in people, not just in infrastructure. As we look toward the future of heart valve science, we must carry that lesson forward. The answers to our hardest questions may not lie in the most well-funded lab or the most cited journal, but in a conversation between a nurse in Kigali and a surgeon in Toronto, between a patient in Delhi and a researcher in Tokyo, between you and someone you haven't yet met. Imhotep did not rise to prominence by privilege. He rose through relentless dedication. That same energy lives in every young clinician and scientist across the world who stays late in the lab, who performs surgery under limited conditions, and who teaches with conviction despite obstacles. In our field of heart valve surgery and disease, we know passion and hard work are not abstract virtues. They're concrete realities, visible in every case, every OR, every decision made in the name of a patient's life. Think of the surgeon in a resource-limited hospital in Maputo performing mitral valve repair with basic instruments and infrastructure, yet achieving incredible outcomes through creativity, training, and sheer will. Or the team in India running high-volume valve camps, screening hundreds of patients in rural areas, identifying rheumatic disease early, and offering life-changing surgery with minimal overhead, driven by nothing but a mission. Or the young resident in Bogota who, after working all day, spends the evening learning advanced echo interpretation from open access lectures, because he wants to be the best advocate for his future patients. Even in the most advanced centers, we see this same spirit. The fellow who scrubs into a 12-hour complex reoperation, not just to observe, but to learn. The nurse who ensures a valve-in-valve patient is mobilized and smiling within 24 hours. The engineer refining leaflet design through hundreds of prototypes to mimic the elegance of a native anatomy. I've had the privilege of witnessing all of the above firsthand. They are all propelled by a single fuel. Passion is what turns these grueling, technical, and high-stake tasks into a calling. And hard work, quiet, steady, and oftentimes unseen, is what makes innovation durable. It is easy to admire the moment of success, the perfectly seated valve, the great echo post-op, but we must honor the road to get there. The rehearsals in the wet lab, the rejections before the accepted manuscript, the hours of deliberate, repetitive practice poured into developing judgment and skill. In every corner of the world, whether under bright lights or dim ones, heart valve professionals are doing remarkable things, not because it's easy, but because they care deeply. That's the kind of effort we need to celebrate, support, and scale. Because when passion and hard work are met with opportunity, the impossible becomes routine. If collaboration is the engine and passion the fuel, then mentorship is the compass. I've been incredibly fortunate in my professional life to have rubbed shoulders and been deeply impacted by a large number of people. The list is too long to mention each of them individually. But above all, I've had the privilege of spending 4 fundamental years and foundational years with one of the most remarkable mentors imaginable, Sir Magdi Yacoub. He shaped me not just as a surgeon, not just as a researcher, but as a human being. Watching him work was like watching medicine and humanity dance in perfect rhythm. He had an unwavering commitment to scientific precision, but also to people. He could perform a complex Ross procedure in a child with total focus and then gently kneel by the bedside of a worried parent, making time to reassure them without ever glancing at a clock. As a researcher, he never let the status quo dictate the future. He encouraged asking bold questions and challenging dogma. He taught me to have the courage of my own ideas, even when others easily dismissed them. If everyone agrees with you, he once told me, you're probably not doing anything new. That lesson gave me the resolve to push forward ideas that initially faced resistance, to swim against the tide or common think. And over time, some of these ideas, refined, tested, improved, have become part of mainstream practice. Others were admittedly less optimal ideas. But ultimately, as he always taught me, the only drivers were not fame or the podium, but patience and science. They should always be and remain the guiding light of every decision we make, every trial we design, and every presentation we give. As a mentor, he was generous and demanding in equal measure. He set a high bar not to intimidate, but to inspire. He gave trust early and expected accountability. He pushed you not just to succeed, but to grow. And his mentorship did not stop in the OR or the lab. It extended to life. He taught me that service is not a side project. It's the center of our work. That humility is not weakness, it is wisdom. That one should never be so absorbed in achievement that they forget to care. That kind of mentorship changes you permanently. It rewires your compass. And today, as we face a generation of young clinicians and scientists emerging into an increasingly complex world, our responsibility is to become that kind of compass for them. Because mentorship is not a favor, it is a force. It is the only thing that makes excellence sustainable across generations. And it is our greatest legacy. So let's create mentorship models that are global, equitable, and enduring. Behind every achievement, every publication, every surgery, every speech like this one, there's often a quiet, unwavering presence. Family. I would not be standing... My parents are here. I get a little emotional. We don't live in the same country, so I don't get the opportunity to see them very often. But I would not be standing here today without the love, strength, and sacrifice of my family. I was fortunate to grow up with parents who taught me by example the value of hard work, integrity, and an uncompromising pursuit of excellence. They did not just talk about those ideals, they lived them. And whether it was through their own professions, their expectations, or their everyday actions, they instilled in me a sense that effort and ethics matter more than applause. They showed me that the real test of character is not how you act when things go well, but how you carry yourself when they won't. That consistency, that humility and dedication formed the bedrock of a meaningful life. Their influence is woven into every part of who I am as a physician, a researcher, a mentor, and a parent myself. And today, I am equally grateful for the support of my own family, my wife Jessica and my children Kenzie, Kiwi, and Otto, who remind me every day of why we do this work. They keep me grounded, they give me purpose beyond the operating room, and teach me, often without knowing it, how to lead with compassion. Imhotep's legacy is not just his pyramid, it's the idea that science, service, and society are intertwined, that healing is a collective act. So as we close, I want to speak directly to two groups in this room, to the leaders in this room, in high-income nations and low and middle-income countries alike. We have the power to shape not just the science of heart valve disease, but the culture that surrounds it. Let us lead with open arms, not closed doors. Let us be mentors in the full sense of the word, not gatekeepers, but guides. We must create spaces where young people from every background and every corner of the world feel that they belong, that their questions matter, and that they are invited to the table, not someday, but now. Excellence does not arise from perfection. It arises from people being challenged, believed in, and supported. We owe it to our field and to the next generation to lead not just with brilliance, but with generosity. And to the young people in the room, or those watching online, let me tell you what I know for certain. Hard work is the great equalizer. You may not have the best lab, you may not be at the fanciest institution, but if you bring discipline, focus, and relentless curiosity, you will go further than you imagine. Have the courage of your ideas, even when they seem too ambitious, even when people tell you it's never been done that way, especially then. The heart valve community needs your ideas, your energy, your stubborn optimism. Seize opportunities. They may be disguised as hard problems, and when they come, step into them fully. Our field is not yet finished. The best solutions, the most elegant procedures, the most equitable models of care, they are still waiting, and you may be the one to find them. Thank you for being here today. and thank you for the privilege of serving as your president this past year. Thank you. And now it's my distinct honor and privilege to invite Prof, as I call him, Professor Yacoub, to the stage for his presentation. Prof. This is the slide.
This is the one forward.
To move this.
Thank you very much. I'm deeply honored to be presenting this keynote address for a variety of reasons. First, I would like to congratulate the Society and its president for several things. One, making the Society now the voice of heart disease patients and science in the world. This has been established. So I'm humbled to be standing in front of you, addressing this society. Also, for the fact of choosing Egypt, Cairo, ancient Egypt, culture. It's an iconic city. Congratulations for the society for achieving maturity, and thank you for inviting me to give this talk. Now, the title chosen for me by the society was Bridging the Widening Gap Between the Haves and the Have-Nots. Where do we go from here? A subject very close to my heart. And in the next few minutes, I hope to show you that, in the chronology, the size of the problem and what can we do about it, and have a model to be replicated in the world. The size of the problem is well known to you, and that is cardiovascular disease, and particularly heart valve disease, continue to be a very important cause of death and suffering worldwide, even today. And there are statistics shown on this slide, like 17.8 million deaths in 1 year due to cardiovascular disease. A lot of it is due to heart failure epidemic, but heart failure also is caused by heart valve disease, which is common both in children and in adults, and it does not spare developed countries, but there is a massive brunt on developing countries. And the inequalities are incredible. And with a higher number of children, all of this can be prevented The massive inequalities are exemplified, for example, by childhood annual mortality in 1 year was 152 per thousand in Guinea-Bissau versus 2.5. Massive difference in mortality. Is this acceptable? Obviously not. So that begs the question, what can we do about it? And one has to ask the questions, to quote Jane Somerville, who likes to be controversial, but she asks the questions which are very apt. Who cares? And who acts? Who pays? I try to answer some of these questions. Who cares? Obviously, every human being cannot accept this inequality. And who acts? Obviously, those who can, but professionals like you who see the suffering firsthand can at least start something, the ball rolling. Who pays? It could be a variety of things because there are priorities in developing countries. So we can have consortia, not necessarily one person, but people combined together to help to pay. How do we start? They can easily go around the world, and essentially it is of importance to have any system sustainable. So it's no good just doing a few things and let it die with the death of the individuals. It has to be sustainable. So a dedicated center, because what happens is you need to dedicate a center to serve a defined number of a population, and the number which has been given in a meeting of the WHO some years ago at The Hague was 3 million individuals need at least one heart center. Obviously, this is not happening, but at least we can start. And what do? We have potential stakeholders, and I'll talk more about that. And you need correspondence, people on the ground who are enthusiastic to help the program, and a supporting government. You cannot rely on the government to start with, not because they don't want to. They have other priorities. They are lumbered with massive problems. So we have to depend on yourself. All what you say to the government, please support us. Give us the green light to start. The stakeholders, you have to start with the population because they own the program. And whenever you talk to them, say it is your center, which it is. And you should find some young, enthusiastic professionals, and I'm very impressed by the young energy of young individuals, the next generation. I really am optimistic when I see young people full of energy, wanting to change the world. Just give them a chance. And that is what the center should rely on. And they should be stakeholders. And then when that would guarantee sustainability by having human resources. But what about money? And that money, who pays, talked about, you start by collecting donations, and that's what happened in the Aswan Heart Center. And your president, our president, has shown the Aswan Heart Center. It started by donations from abroad, from rich people. But guess what? Eventually, even middle class and poor people, when they saw what the center can do in terms of changing society, they were donating massively for the center. So that is a model. Eventually, of course, the government, the people will inherit all that and take it over, but you don't expect it to happen immediately. Then comes the idea, and you heard it already from Ismail, from our president, about research as an integral part of service. Sometimes the donors say, how are you going to use this money? I want it to be used for treating patients. Of course you want to treat patients, but you want to have excellence in treating patients, not only now, but generating knowledge for the next generations as well, our children and grandchildren, like we are benefiting from previous knowledge. So research is essential. And you have to convince people, the donors, that we cannot achieve excellence in our service without integrating research. Now, I will give you, and time is running, am I okay? The chain of hope as an example. I will show you some examples of how we can at least make a dent on this incredible problem, inequalities around the world. Chain of Hope was founded now about 25 years ago and is present in many countries around the world, mainly in Africa and Central America. And as we have heard already from our president, the Aswan Heart Center is an example and a model. And then I will just show a few figures. This is Aswan, such a beautiful place. Sorry, can you see it? How do I do that?
Just move one.
Huh?
This is the slide that they see. There.
Yeah, this is Aswan, and this is the center. And the concept here that the intensive care, the nurses, and the nursing station are facing the patients, and they see them at all times. And the output of the center has been going up except during the pandemic, and they perform very complex surgery, arterial switch operations, sometimes 3 or 4 a day, valve conserving operation, like you have heard from Professor Lanzak, anything and everything for the local population and African and international patients. Also, they offer the same service. And the numbers have been going up, and it's all free of charge. There is nobody who pays anything, because the populations, as you know, do not have enough money to pay. And these are just not only open heart surgery, but percutaneous, the number of cardiac cath and percutaneous procedures is rising. And there is no competition between surgery and percutaneous. They are totally integrated trying to do the very best for the patient, no competition. And these are the numbers. And importantly, apart from the rising numbers and the quality which I've been talking about, cost effectiveness is very, very important. As you can see, the operations at the Aswan Heart Center, complex operations, cost around $8,000 to $9,000. Where do you find that in the world? 1/10 of what you would pay in any other center. It's because your donors want to know two things. One, where does my money go? It doesn't go on administration. Many of the things are donated, and the administrators don't pay themselves handsomely. And 93% of all the donations go to the patient, and that makes the cost effectiveness good. Lower down. How do I move? It's not moving. Yeah. And as Ismail have shown you, when this venture started, we were like how many? 4 or 5 people. And now is the staff. And some of them are present here. Most of them are present here. And they are all working together, from administrators, cleaners, people who serve the patients. All of them have a very, what I call Aswan Heart's spirit, just the total dedication for the patients and for the science. Now, you've already seen the new heart center in Cairo by the pyramids, and that was designed by Lord Norman Foster from the UK. And you can see here the 4 high-rises, which to some extent look like Sydney Opera House and reflects the feluccas in the Nile. But also each room sees the pyramids. And the concept Lord Norman Foster had is that when you're sick, you want something to live for. And he thought that the pyramids could be a good thing to look at. Every room, every patient in his bed can see the pyramids. And it says, according to Norman Foster, if these pyramids survived 4,000 years, maybe I will survive as well. So this is a nice concept which has been adopted. The other center, which is evolving and hopefully will be finished this year, is in Rwanda. Can you see the picture? Oh, what am I doing wrong, Ismail? Here it is. Yeah, this one. So this is the Rwanda Heart Center, which mirrors the one by the pyramids. Beautiful buildings designed by a young German architect who mirrors the Norman Foster. And the land has been donated by the government of Rwanda. Now, why Rwanda? Because it's in Central Africa. It will serve both the east and west of Central Africa, and serve Burundi, which is next door. And they have suffered from the genocide, but now deserve every help because the population of the world didn't do anything to stop the genocide. So now we owe it to them that they got out of it and know that it will never happen again. So they need help, and help they should have. And that is the beautiful building which is 3/4 finished, and we're hoping that it will be finished by the end of the year. So in conclusion, you can see that concerted efforts at closing the widening gap between the haves and the have-nots are ongoing. And this is but one example. It is hoped that this will act as a model to be replicated around the world. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I'll invite our present past presidents, past presidents who are present in the room to join us here for a fireside chat. So Vino Turani, Hanneke Tackenberg, Marta Sitges, Michael Borger. I think we have a bit of time for some conversations and to pick your brains about some of these ideas and some of the concepts and where our field is moving towards. So let me open it with Hanneke. Hanneke, you've been very deeply involved with a lot of the work on the research side, particularly of elevating young scholars and work in bridging between your work in Holland and in low-income countries and in other places. How do you see some of this? How do you see research supporting research in areas where there's a lack of resources and we think that all the money should really be going towards a patient directly, like Professor Yacoub was mentioning, where research may be thought of as a bit of a less of a priority? How do you approach that? How have you managed to support these patients, these students and projects, and how do you see this going forward with funding? And big question, open question, but I'd just be curious to hear what your thoughts are looking at the last 10 years and where you think we're going with the next 10 years.
Well, I think, and I should start saying, ever since I've been involved in Heart Valve Society from the beginning, and before that in Society of Heart Valve Disease, I think it was Professor Yacoub, and you told me early on, there's one world with many voices, and coming from a high-income country, quite naive. I remember that being a young scholar myself, being exposed to that and having that broad view. I think we brought that together in Heart Valve Society by basically saying we're no longer gonna address all the challenges there are in heart valve disease through our, you can call it professional societies that are quite siloed. No, we're gonna bridge. We're going to bridge science with cardiology, with cardiac surgery, with science, and bring these people together. And I think through Heart Valve Society, and in particular the way we organize ourselves, by putting young talent first. I think we also have the Young Heart Valve Society representatives who attend our board, and I think that's amazing, but also making sure that they get a podium. I think that's key. Also, what we've always done is make sure that in the way we organize ourselves, that we represent the world, and that we are a society where everybody is welcome, and that we'll just make it happen. You know, it's not about money. I think it starts with community, and as soon as you have community, things become fluid, start flowing. And from that perspective, I love every meeting here, because I meet all my friends, I meet new people who want to join and who want to feel included and contributed, but also have a voice. I think everybody has a voice. And I think, for example, yesterday, the session on rheumatic heart valve disease is amazing. And that's where you see what we add. But I'll leave it at that, because it's a big question. I can talk about it all day.
Mike, you were the inaugural president of this society, so that was 10 years ago now, and the field has evolved so much since that 2015 meeting. Where do you think we'll be in 10 years from now? How has the field evolved? What are the challenges? How can we best serve our patients and be true to science in this ever-changing and fast-moving and industry-driven to a large extent world that we live in? What are the challenges you see and the opportunities?
Thanks, Ismail, for the question. And first of all, congratulations on an amazing meeting and a very inspiring talk from yourself and Sir Magdi Yacoub. I would just want to point one thing out that you mentioned in your talk, which I think is important for all the young people out there that are going to be answering your question in 10 years. And that is that hard work is the great equalizer. We have a very varied background here, the past presidents. But hard work is the common denominator. We all took pride and joy in hard work over the years, and that got us to this point. And this will be what will be driving the young people here to carry us further in the management of patients with heart valve disease. Where exactly it's going in 10 years I guess I'm very interested to see what AI does. In some ways, I'm very impressed with AI. In some ways, it's kind of, not so impressive. And to see if it's able to make a leap, certainly with diagnostics, I'm 100% sure it will help us with diagnostics. But whether it helps also in therapeutics, I'm a little bit unsure. And I would just say to everybody out here right now, just to find the thing that interests you and then to follow that, and with a lot of hard work. And then sometimes you end up getting presented with an opportunity that you really didn't see coming, and then to jump into it with both feet. So we're both Canadians, but we're in very different parts of the world right now. And it was through doors that were opened, myself from Fred Moore, who really helped support the union between the European and the American societies. And then as somebody that was kind of straddling both sides of the ocean, I was lucky enough to get the support of Maurice Serrano and Jeffrey Borer as well to become the first president. But here I would just like to once again really encourage all of the young people out there just to find what is interesting and to follow it. And I don't know what's going to be happening in 10 years from now, but I'm really interested to see.
We'll get back to the young people training, because I think that's really important, and all your journeys are very inspirational to everybody in the room. But since you mentioned AI, let me just ask Marta, because she's in the imaging realm of our world. How has AI changed your practice, if any at all, or how do you see it changing our practice or the way we do things?
Well, thank you, Ismail. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. I'm a strong believer in AI, but I am an even stronger believer in human intelligence. So I think AI is already here, will be more and more, and will be helping us, hopefully, in our daily practice, being more precise in our diagnostic, being more precise in the delivery of the therapies, and being more precise in selecting the best therapy for our patients. So probably AI will be a very powerful tool to help us on doing our job. But I would like to highlight the importance of human intelligence, because despite AI will be for sure in the future, present is there. We already are using our AI in our daily practice, in our machines. But the most important thing is human intelligence, because this, I think, our care to patients relies on two things: our collaboration, and this is becoming more and more important. Professor Yacoub said there is no competition between us, and I think that's the most important thing for our patients, to really collaborate, to put all together our knowledge or our expertise or our experience for the care of our patients. And also, I think the second part of human intelligence is the feeling with our patient. I think that's the first step to cure or to treat our patients, how we explain the opportunities, the options, the disease, and if the patient doesn't feel that, it's going to be difficult to take care of our patients. And I don't think AI will ever supply that human touch. So yes for AI, but for sure yes for human intelligence.
Vino, why don't you've been very heavily involved in the last few years in evolving technologies, and so what advice do you give, first of all, to young people in the room, and secondly, how in your practice, and just share some of the wisdom of how you've managed to balance the quest for innovation, with patients, being the ultimate advocates for patients at the same time, and not just rushing into things. You've done a very good job at balancing these things. So how can you impart some of the wisdom you've learned?
First of all, Ismail, thank you so much. I remember we talked about Cairo a couple of times on the phone, and I'm so glad that we were able to come here. This is the first time that any meeting on the global level, like the Heart Valve Society, has come to Africa, and this is phenomenal. And I think you've opened the doors to a lot more of knowledge sharing between this continent and the other continents. So congratulations, and I think that echoes what Professor Yacoub also has talked about. So it's been very difficult. Now I'm 19 years in practice, and my first TAVR was in 2006. And so there were 5 centers in the United States that were doing catheter valves. And I had visited with Michael that year in 2006, and within 6 months I did my first TAVR procedure. My philosophy, again, mentorship was my entire life has been with Robert Guyton, Michael Mack, and Joseph Bavaria, because we were all doing catheter stuff early with Fred Moore. And I want to echo what Michael said. I saw an opportunity. I wanted to only do valve surgery. And when I showed up in 2005 with 10 senior surgeons, and then I show up, nobody actually had a valve practice. Everybody did everything. And I decided that I wanted to try to spend as much time with valves as possible, and spent a couple of weeks with Fred Moore, and Michael was there at the time also. I went in with 2 feet, Mike, right? And we talked a lot about this. And I think all my mentors said surgery, 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 and I thought there was a different way to do it. And so I found that opportunity to go to a couple of places. I went to Beijing, Fuai Hospital. I visited with Fred Moore in Leipzig. And I thought about why not give that patient the opportunity of best of both worlds. And to me, that gave me equipoise in one pathway, and also the surgical pathway, which is dear to me. So I think that you have to change the dogma sometimes. And so for me, my practice is on a Monday, I'm with a cardiologist, and we see somewhere around 30 to 40 valve patients every Monday together. In the office, we have 11 exam rooms. Tuesday, I do open surgery all day. Wednesday, I have a dedicated day in the cath lab. And so Tuesday, I'll do 2 to 3 open surgeries. Wednesday, I'll do somewhere between 6 to 9 catheter valves between mitral, tricuspid, and aortic. And Thursday and Friday, I'm back in the operating room doing 2 to 3 open surgeries. So every week is somewhere around 10 to 15 valve patients. And for me, it doesn't matter. If it's a catheter valve, I'm helping a patient. If it's a surgical valve, I'm helping the patient. And I think that as young surgeons and cardiologists, you have to be open to this model. I go to a lot of surgery meetings, and it's a bashing of cardiologists. I go to a lot of cardiology meetings, it's a bashing of surgeons. This is why I love the Heart Valve Society. We sit down with epidemiologists, we sit down with basic scientists, we look at the future, Michael, that you talked about. We sit down and we do sessions together between surgery and cardiology, and there's a good balance. And somehow we have to find that, because at the end of the day, I'm not just a surgeon, I'm a physician. Professor Yacoub talked about this. You're trying to help the patient, you're not trying to help yourself. And somehow we've lost that. And I really think the Heart Valve Society tries to bring it all together, and I hope that this continues much more past 10 years. I think we have the future right in front of us. So try to find that commonality in us, not what divides us. And I loved your title. It was a perfect scenario. Thank you.
I want to open this as well to the audience. So please feel free to step up to the microphone and ask questions to the past presidents, or open it for discussion or comments, because that will make it even a livelier discussion. I see Gaurav get up.
Yeah. First of all, congratulations, Ismail, on a fantastic meeting. I think we've all enjoyed Cairo in a different way than we'd ever anticipated. I'm very struck by the theme this morning about how do you bridge the gap to areas of the world that don't have the access. And about 85% of the population in the world are low income. So do they have the same access that even people here in Cairo have? And I've had the opportunity to do some work in Africa and see the have-nots. And so I see there's two big gaps. And we can talk about AI, which will make it easier, I think, for the developed nations to maybe impart knowledge, and that eventually will expand. But the two big issues are knowledge. There are plenty of people, plenty of centers in the world that don't have the knowledge, they don't have the surgical skill, they don't have the ICU skill. That's a big gap. And I think the bigger issue that I've experienced is sourcing for disposables. And so I'm impressed that you've been able to accomplish that in Egypt, because that's a big cost. And Sir Magdi talked about the cost slowly going down, but that's still a big cost for most of those low-income families. And I'm curious, that's the big gap that I see, along with knowledge. How do we make cannulas, valves, bypass machines, oxygenators? How do we get them further out into the population, Africa and South Asia, et cetera?
Prof, any comments on that? Or any comments on that? How do we get the cost of consumables lower? Is there any way that we can leverage, that we can further lower the cost? Because even $8,000 is still a lot of money in many countries per patient. Is there room for improving on that?
I think communication now is so much better around the world, and to have ways and means of contacting people, like one organization I know so well, the Chain of Hope. So if the Chain of Hope cannot handle something, they know many centers around the world, so they direct the patients towards that, and they're not only patients, but equipment, or if a center is lacking something, they try to put them in touch with other people who can help. So, because it all needs a concerted, coordinated effort. Nobody can do it alone. So if we're together, we can do it. And maybe more and more coordination between the centers is required, not will be.
Michael?
Maybe if I can just also reiterate, though, Gaurav, the disposables, don't forget, in a lot of the developing countries, they are reused, right? And it's works. But I've been visiting China and India off and on for over 20 years now, and the amount of progress that they've made, especially China, is immense. It's unbelievable. Or here in Egypt, looking at the picture of the Cairo Global Heart Center, I'm dying of jealousy in Germany. I wish we had, or the Aswan Pediatric Intensive Care Unit, I wish we had such a nice facility. Obviously, the rest of the world is catching up. And the key is, I think it's easy to sort of miss that point on Sir Magdi Yaqub's talk, is the local capabilities. So you cannot have teams just fly in and do a few cases and fly out. And there has to be building of the local knowledge and buy-in from the locals, and then that leads to great things, as we're seeing in Ismail's birth country here in Egypt.
Thanks, Michael. Ahmed Afifi?
First of all, thank you, Ismail, for the very inspiring talk. As a person who works in the Aswan Heart Center, I can attest that everything you said and how you feel about this is entirely true. I know that we've sort of steered into a non-medical conversation, but it's equally important in terms of cost, how we can do that in low and middle income countries, and how can we reduce it. In many countries, especially in Southeast Asia, there's a lot of the consumables are being produced locally. Certainly valves, oxygenators, and also for a long time suture material, dressings, and all that. What we've done in Aswan to try and reduce cost is that we at the very beginning we were reliant on huge containers coming in from abroad, getting us all the materials that we were using. But then bit by bit, as we started to build a store, locally sourced material, especially sutures, dressings, medications, if they pass a certain quality control parameters, then we use those instead of relying on materials used from abroad. And I think it has made a huge contribution, not only to cost reduction, but also to improving the local capacity. The dressing used, for example, in the operating theater, we helped in improving the design and the material and the quality of those. And some of the companies that we have helped are now exporting abroad. So it's kind of an overspill onto the community.
That's a great point. I think that's really, these are the efforts that are needed to move the needle in that field. Omar Nuwaitu from Liverpool.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm from Cairo, actually.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm a heart surgeon who started in Cairo, and now I'm in Liverpool, UK. Throughout the years, I've been interested in, I'm sure you're aware, the Dave Shetty model and the Narayana Heart Center, using health insurance in rural communities and using the economies of scale to fund that massive heart center. Question to Professor Yacoub: have you considered that in Egypt? That model of having low-income families pay a very small dividend and using the economies of scale to fund a massive project like yours?
Did you get the question, Prof? Just getting even poor families to pay a small amount in order to keep the mill going.
We have been against that for a simple reason, and that is we don't want the rest of the patients to lose confidence. One of the things why we have, for example, when I say we, the team in Aswan are so popular, is that there is equality. It doesn't matter whether somebody is a multimillionaire or somebody who is very poor. And people appreciate that. And so we don't want to have a two-tier system, some who can pay. What happens in practice, though, that those who can pay, actually, we do not send them a bill, but they come back and say, can I finance 20 patients at 8,000 each or something? So it does work. It's not entirely free. It is free at source, but patients who can pay come back and pay more than if we were to send them a bill. Have I answered your question in a long-winded way?
Yes, in a way. I think my question comes from the fact that if you don't have big charities, if you don't have charitable funds to fund such a big project, the other model is empowering the people to fund it themselves. Is this a more difficult model, or is it and I know it worked really well in Aswan because we have you had the access to big charities. In the absence of such big charities, do you think a model like that might work?
So can you?
Yeah, well, I think it's an important question. In the absence of a strong figure like yourself in the locally, or a charity that is well funded to support a project, a budding project in a poorer country, how do you see? Let's say you go to Guinea or you go to to Burundi, and you don't have that person like yourself who people will rally around and who will get a big charity to fund, and how do you get these programs, grassroots programs, started in these countries in the absence of that one person driven project?
I think that when people see that this is a model, and that's what I ended by saying, that it can be replicated. One center is not going to treat Egypt alone now. Is 110 million people. We're not going to make an impact on that. But acting as a model, other people can see the wisdom of doing that, that adopt the idea that every patient deserves the very best. And there are, even the government now here, I'm talking about Egypt now, but other countries can follow. They have a system of primary care and they want to pay for certain patients. So we say, oh, you can do that. We can enhance the thing, but other centers can do the same. Have I answered your question?
Yes, you have. Thank you very much.
Samir.
First of all, congratulations and incredible job, and we really enjoyed every program, and of course your very inspiring speech and Professor Yacub's inspiring speech. My question is that we are all focused primarily, many of the talks and many of the efforts on new technologies, how we manage patients, complicated patients, but prevention or early diagnosis or treating the patients before or after what we do to them is also equally important. So how in the near, in my opinion, in next 10 years, we will see a lot of advances in how we manage the patients before the valve diseases and how we follow the patient and make the valve diseases such that our treatment lasts longer. How do you see or where should we put our efforts, especially in the developing countries, because this is even more difficult than treating acutely ill patients that we see in the hospitals.
Who wants to take that?
So who wants to answer this? Yeah? Okay. I think following up patients is essential, but it is an ongoing thing that as you do more, you create more problems in the future. And so eventually, like with adult congenitals, when you operate on thousands and thousands of children, they come back and you have to continue to care for them. The idea of care for life is essential, and not say, we've done it now, goodbye. But how is that going to training more people in adult congenital dealing with these problems and with redo operations and all that is essential, and having special centers for that, maybe not the original center, having them helping other people to deal with. But it is an ongoing problem. Not because sometimes you see patients who come and say, I have had an operation, I don't know what they did, and now he has massive problems. You really have to follow up all your patients meticulously and provide for them in somewhere else, nearby, whatever. But it is an ongoing problem. Thank you.
Hanneke, I think you had a comment.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that because I agree. We're creating more challenges toward the future. Now, at the same time, if you think about moving forward, I think what we often forget, and it's those people that we talk about at our meetings, and that's the patients and the families around the patients. I think in the next 10 years, empowering the people, creating knowledge in the communities, creating also, I think, social change, change in attitude among patients, among communities when it comes to heart valve disease, and especially when I talked to, when I was in a session yesterday on rheumatic heart disease, the stigma there is, working on that is also important. And so I hope in 10 years that in this room there's also going to be a lot of patient representatives also here on stage joining our discussion, because this is social innovation that we do need.
If I can just say one point then, Samir, to your question, I think we shouldn't apologize for having a good treatment option, which is intervention. We have, for example, degenerative mitral regurgitation. We have an operation which is basically curative. And the risks are so low nowadays that we are able to offer it for a huge number of patients. Preventative measures, we haven't really identified anything yet for heart valve disease other than preventing streptococcus infection in children. Then to sort of say, well, SGLT2 or GLP-1 agonists that we're going to apply to everybody with diastolic, who has a risk factor for diastolic heart failure, that has a huge cost impact for society. Prevention, I know it's extremely important, but for heart valve disease, we're just not there yet. And intervention is pretty damn good. So I'm not apologetic about us focusing on that aspect, at least for the next 10, 20 years.
It is, by the way, but it is changing because, genetics, we heard about Lp(a), how we prolong your operation, or how we have prosthetic valve last longer. So there are a lot of areas where so-called preventive measures are going to be super important in the future.
Secondary prevention.
I can see that happening when people have mild to moderate disease. I see your point, but I also see in Michael's, once you get severe, I think that's gone. But that mild to moderate, there's some new data that is coming out that may be, I think that's the next 10 years.
Probably there, going back to artificial intelligence, there's a place for early diagnosis and access to people who have low access to these therapies or to this early diagnosis, because the big problem is not having an intervention, which is it. The big problem is to have an echo, because there is no access, in the world. So I think that's the prevention also Samir was referring to. So I think in the upcoming 10 years, digital stethoscope communications. You can do telemedicine from anywhere, probably from the moon in a few years. So I think that's going to be a big change on earlier diagnosis and more precise diagnosis, definitely, I hope.
Yeah, so there's still a huge proportion of patients with significant severe valvular heart disease in well-developed countries that are not being treated. This is low-hanging fruit. I think we really need to focus on this for the next few years at least.
Marta, how close are we to a fully AI-enabled or supported digital stethoscope? Something you can just put and it gives you the diagnosis.
I still think that we are getting closer, but still not there. The big problem, I think we are getting better on automatic acquisition of images, getting better on automatic measurement of images, but still a while to adequately interpretation of the images. But I think it's a matter of time. We will get there. I don't want to lose my job, but I will transform my job.
First of all, thank you so much for two amazing presentations. As a young Egyptian, we always grew up watching the inspirational achievements of Professor Yacoub, and now Dr. Al-Hamamsi, we're also being inspired by you. And as an Egyptian, although I'm doing my training abroad and focused on that, and many other young trainees as well, we always have the question and in the back of our minds, how can we help back home, and if we can help back home, and not just that, but also in other less privileged places. So I guess my question is there anything that we can do just to kind of help you out in your mission? Thank you.
Well, I think the wanting to help is the answer. I remember Prof had this story about one of his daughters who was a non-doctor who, was young, and Chain of Hope was early on, and she said, I would like to go. And he said, what do you want to do? And she said, I want to help. And he said, then you've got a role. And I think wanting to help is step number one, and then how you define it, and it depends on what your passion is, where your heart is, what interests you. You have to go with your passion. It can't be a strategic choice of where I want to go because they need a heart failure doctor, but I really like valve surgery. But so I think really following your gut, that thing that tells you this is what keeps me up at night, that's what you want to be doing. And there are multiple ways to get involved and to help. I don't think there's one single formula to do it. Perhaps to build on your question, for the trainees in the room who are wondering, now how do I go abroad for 1 or 2 years and train with Vino or Mike or Martha or Hanneke, or again, I don't want this to sound like a very gloomy session where we talk about, surgery in low-income countries. That's very hard and very expensive. But how, with all these barriers and the expenses and the visas and the this and the that, and how do we break these barriers? How do we create models of training and global collaboration where we can actually have young trainees come spend some time, and then we can go and have this ongoing collaboration in a world where this is becoming harder and harder from a licensing standpoint, a visa standpoint, etc. What are your visions?
Yeah,
Vino, you may have some
can I
ideas.
comment on that? I think you're asking a very good question. And I would say that somebody told me when I was very young, probably in your position, you have to decide young whether you want to be in the audience listening to the person on the podium, or you want to be on the person on the podium teaching the person in the audience. And what Michael and all of us have said is hard work. I think working super hard, and what you can give back is also with your interest and your hard work to try to be someone who is a role model, like Sir Magdi has been and also Ismail has been. So trying to get so passionate what you do, trying to be the best at what you do, that you're on the stage becoming a mentor to other people. That's something that's demonstrable, it's doable, and right here in Egypt, you're seeing two of the world's best surgeons mentoring you mentally. And you've got to, I think that's one of your goals. You can give back, you can give some money, and you can do this and that, but you want to become a mentor. And that would then change the future of another 10 or 15 people in this room today. So really work hard towards that.
Thank you very much.
First of all, I want to say thank you so much for the amazing talk. And I know you all are like experts in cardiac surgery or research or whatever. So I'm just a little bit curious about, like, is there a specific moment of like sparkling light, or like, is there an awe moment that makes you want to do, yes, I want to do cardiac surgery, I want to do valve research, or I want to do things? I guess anyone could answer this.
That's a great question. We'll take it from there to here. Vino, you start. What was your aha moment?
My father, who's now passed away, is a cardiologist in a very small town of 8,000 people where I grew up. And as even when I was in India, I had a stethoscope around me, and I think that for me it's always been a passion just to be like my dad. As simple as that was, I've always wanted to be like him. When he died at 86, I will never forget this. I'm at his bedside in Atlanta now, and he looked at me, he goes, I had scrubs on. I'd just come from the hospital doing a case, and he said, you should have been a cardiologist. I'm so... And I looked at him, I said, Dad, I think I did okay. I'm a heart surgeon. He goes, you should have been a cardiologist. So just the idea of being with my dad as a child at age 5 was my aha moment.
Yeah, I guess for me, completely different. As a medical student, I went for a rotation to San Francisco, and I ended up in a heart failure lab with this former tech of Christian Barnard. His name is Winston Wickham, and I spent 2.5 months with him building working heart models, doing Langendorfs, all kinds of cool stuff. And at that point in time, I'm like, I never want to go any place different. And that had to do, back then it was heart transplant, but soon it became heart valve disease. And for me, this guy in San Francisco, guy from South Africa, for me the circle is round actually, because during this meeting I met a cardiac surgeon from South Africa. Who knows him? And I haven't seen Winston in 30 years, and I look very much forward to him and tell where I ended up. So, yeah.
So it's difficult to explain a concrete moment to see the light. That was not the case. So I became a medical student, and I love the physiology of the heart. So I decided to become a cardiologist, and then I had the big fortune of finding many mentors in my life. So I have my teachers in clinical cardiology, my teachers in ultrasound, and then what I decided to be is something like working in collaborative teams. So I was very fortunate to be, like my older boss said, you're the parsley of every sauce, no? Because we are doing echo, so you work with surgeons, you work with electrophysiologists, now we also work with interventional cardiologists. So I really was fortunate to have all these mentors that inspire me, and I could have a long list, but they are cardiologists, they are researchers, they are surgeons. So I think for me it was the thing of a collaborative team, what I wanted to work with, no? And I think it was very important what has been mentioned before by Binod, I think, is this role model. So you saw that heart team and you said, okay, I want to be involved there, no? Something that you like and you push hard and strong to be in that group, no? So I think that was my story. Thank you.
I would also underline role model mentor. So I come from a huge family, but none of them are doctors. But I actually chose neurosurgery first, and then I realized as soon as I got into it, it was a mistake. And then I thought, oh, I'm a failure, I quit. I really didn't know what the hell I was doing. And then a cardiac surgeon by the name of Andrew Maitland asked me to assist him. And then I was assisting him every day, and then I realized I would rather be on the other side of the table. And then eventually I got to Toronto, and I was with Tyrone David, and I was watching him repair all those valves, and I thought, what struck me was the artistry of it, but also what struck me is that I understood what he was doing, and I thought, hey, this is something that maybe I can do. And then this is where I decided to focus on heart valve disease.
All right, Prof, to close this session, you tell us what made you become a heart surgeon.
I had so many role models, but equally, I watched. My dad was a doctor, and I really wanted to be a doctor at that. And then my aunt died at the age of 22 from rheumatic mitral stenosis. And I then said to my dad, I want to be a heart surgeon. And then as I went on, I had other role models like Sir Peter Medawar and transplantation biology and humanity and philosophy. So there are so many role models around, and the role models do play a very important role in shaping our personality.
Great. Well, we've run out of time. I've really enjoyed this conversation. We'll keep that for next year. No, I really enjoyed this session. I hope you all did equally. I look forward to continued collaboration. I want to end this on a positive note. I think, again, collaboration, hard work, and mentorship are the keys. They are free, they're widely available, and they're easy to achieve. So just keep focused and keep doing what you love doing, what your passion tells you to do. Thanks again, and the next session will start at 11 a.m. sharp here.